At WellFed Photography, the word client is becoming a thing of the past. We are now happily welcoming members to enjoy having their family histories captured so that they can have gorgeous pieces of family art to look back on and treasure in this lifetime and by future generations. If you'd like to learn more about becoming a member, you can visit our website at wellfedphotography.com/membership or download our membership brochure in the link provided. Now we hope you enjoyed the episode. Hi everyone, Ariana here from WellFed Photography, and I am joined by Pamela Quiery again from Hand in Hand. We're so delighted to have her on the show for this bonus episode around schooling options, which is important because a lot of people are taking alternative routes to traditional schooling, and Pamela said she'd be happy to chat about her own experiences. So Pam, would you just want to tell our audience a bit about the path that you've chosen with your family and also how your background with hand-in-hand parenting might have influenced this?
Yeah, so thanks, Ariana. Thanks for having me back again. So it's an absolute pleasure to be here. So yeah, I've got a daughter who is 9.5, and my son is about 5.5. So I guess that our story started back when my daughter started nursery school when she was 4 years old. And it was really, really difficult for her. She really struggled with it. And she's always been a very social child and very much attuned to the adults in her life. She always has been. She's always looking for that sort of connection with me or whoever's taking care of her. And whenever she went into nursery, she really struggled with being one of the crowd, being, not just having that really trusted adult that was at hand for her. And that's sort of what she needed at that stage. And the nursery were really great, and they whenever we would bring her to drop off, it took her quite a long time to settle in, but whenever we brought her to drop off, lots of kids would just run in the door and find their friends, but she really had to make that connection with an adult. And the school were very supportive of that they would come up and they would have to play with her for a minute or two and make her feel at home before she could go in and continue on with her day. But it was quite a struggle for her. But we continued on anyway, and I'd thought at that stage about homeschooling her, and I just thought, well, I'll give this a try. I'll give schooling a try. And see how she gets on. And sort of the years just sort of passed, and we got to the pandemic, I guess, and the schools closed in March 2020, the schools closed, and she was at that stage. I should say I'm in Belfast, so I'm in the north of Ireland. So the school years and things are slightly different than down south. But she was in P4 then. She would have been 8. And whenever the schools closed, she was just so delighted. She was so happy, and school had become a real struggle for us. A huge struggle getting her ready, getting her out the door in the morning. She was really, really resistant. So we dreaded the school runs. We dreaded the morning, and she really, really struggled with it. And then when she came home from school, she had kind of she was very, very nervous at school all day, and by the time she got home, she would just sort of she was just letting out everything that she'd held in all day. And I was trying to take that approach. I'm very, very glad, very grateful that she can express all this stuff, but it was it was every day, and it was a real struggle, and that was really just taking up all her energy. So when school's finished, we breathed a sigh of relief. And I know that's not the story for everyone. I know some people really struggled with it. But for us, it was, it was a relief to not have to go through that every morning. And we didn't follow the school. We knew we just needed a break from the school curriculum. So we didn't follow the worksheets and things that were sent to us. I let the teacher know that we were doing it a different way, that we were doing lots of things, but we weren't going to do the worksheets for now. And we did that between March and June of 2020. And we took a total break from schooling, and she just became a different child, really. She really started to thrive. She really found her curiosity again. She became much more interested. She hadn't wanted to read at all. She had a real aversion to reading. She could read, but she chose never to read, really. And after giving school a break, she was really happy to start reading again herself, and I really started just to notice what she was interested in and started to just to follow that. And you know, a lot of the outbursts and frustrations kind of melted away, and our life became a lot calmer. So at that stage, you know, we were sort of hitting the summer holidays, and I started thinking about whether we should continue with the homeschooling. So in September, we made the decision not to go back, and we haven't gone back since. So we are happily homeschooling now.
Would you be able to briefly, and there are differences between country to country, there's differences between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, but maybe just give a brief overview of some of the usual options for school and some of the alternative options for schooling.
Yeah, so I guess in these islands, I mean, it's very much the mainstream school is the choice for most parents, and then I know that more so down south. And just to say, I'm not a complete expert on all of this, and I'm very much learning, but I do have a huge interest in it. So I know down south there are there's a little bit more choice. There are several, you know, democratic type schools where the children have more freedom as to, you know, what they learn and when they learn it and how they spend their time. And, you know, so there'll be more school choices. To my knowledge, there aren't any of those in the north of Ireland. And so then really the other option is homeschooling. I'm sure there's other, I mean, in other countries, there's a lot more choice. There's more, you know, like sort of forest schools and different setups. But here, I think that we are a little bit, there's also the, you know, I suppose the Steiner type schools, which would have a different curriculum as well. So, you know, those are the main options. And I suppose for me, I would probably, if there was more choice of school, I think that would just suit our family more. You know, if there was, if my daughter had sort of more choice over what she learned and more sort of agency over what she was doing, and in smaller class sizes, and, you know, more of an emphasis on, you know, different subjects, you know, more emphasis on outdoors and arts and things like that, then I think that would be a really good option for us. But at the minute where we are, that's there wouldn't be an option like that. So, but I would be very open to that kind of schooling as well, just to give children more choice into what they're doing.
Absolutely. One of the things that really, I guess, surprised me whenever I moved to Ireland was the separation by gender for a lot of schools. Like, I just didn't know that was a thing, because it's not something that I would have experienced. And I was really surprised by that. So I don't know, I'm still learning about all the different schooling options here, but that definitely surprised me.
That wouldn't be as much of a thing in the north. There are some you know, girl only, boy only schools, but not that many, not anywhere near as many as there are in the south. It's a huge thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about your journey through homeschooling and what that has looked like for you, and where to even get started. Like, if someone is thinking that they want to homeschool, like, what is the process? Do you have to notify people? Do you still have to do standardized testing? Just maybe talk about some of the things that are different and how to get started.
Yeah, so in terms of there is a difference between north and south. And as I'm north of the border, I'm definitely not an expert on down south. But what I do know, I think Northern Ireland actually has one of the most relaxed kind of sort of attitudes to homeschooling, which is surprising given lots of other things we wouldn't be as relaxed about. But, you know, for us, we don't have to register with anybody. It's written into law that you know, parents are the chief have the chief responsibility for educating their children in whatever way they see fit. So that gives a lot of freedom to parents here in terms of homeschooling, that, you know, the responsibility is with us to provide an education. So we don't have to register with anybody. You just need to deregister from school. If you're already in school, you deregister, and then it's your responsibility. I know that in the south of Ireland, you need to register you need to register your intent to homeschool. So there's a little bit more paperwork involved. And I don't know if that's with TUSLA or with the Education Board. I'm not sure. I wouldn't be sure about that. But I do know that there's a little bit more paperwork involved. I mean, here sometimes the education authority can get involved and ask for a little bit more information about your educational philosophy and how you're approaching it. But to quite a large extent, you're sort of left to your own devices to do whatever you see fit for your family, which gives a huge amount of freedom.
Yeah, and you said your youngest is 4.5. Is that what you said?
5.5. Yeah.
5.5. Sorry. Yeah. And so, has there been any expression insofar as what that child would like to do with education, and are they both going to homeschool, or what's the thoughts there?
Yeah, so he started in nursery in 2019. So he'd done sort of between September and Christmas of nursery, and then after Christmas through to March, then that's when the pandemic hit. So he had started nursery, and we talked about homeschooling together, and I gave him the option if he wanted to start P1, and he was very happy to stay at home with me. So so we decided that he would stay at home as well. And but I mean, I would be open if he had strong feelings about going to school. That would be okay with me. But I mean, he was okay with nursery, but given a choice of any given morning, he would have said no, thank you. He coped with it better than his sister, but he's quite happy to be at home as well. So that's what we're continuing at present.
What does your day-to-day life look like in actuality? Like when you say you're homeschooling, what does that mean really?
Yeah, so I think for the first period of time, for the first 6 months or so of our homeschooling journey, we very much there's this concept of deschooling, where you sort of give children just a total break to kind of to put school behind them and to really just to settle into homeschooling life and to have no agenda really around what they're doing. So and really just, so we did that. We very much were just hands off. It was like pretty much every day was a Saturday type vibe. So just very, very laid back, and that really gave us the space. It gave my daughter the space to not feel that pressure of that learning is something that she had to do and had some kind of agenda around it. So it really gave her the chance just to decompress from all of that, and just to let her own curiosity sort of develop, which did happen. I spent the time just trying to notice the things that she really enjoyed. So I just started to notice the things that she started to get curious about, and we would just do more of that. So like she became very curious about history, and we just it was only if she wanted to, we would look up things on YouTube, get books out of the library and read things, and we've really just gone from there in terms of following what she's curious about. And also my son as well, and he's a bit younger, so I mean he's mostly just wants to play really. So and he's happy to join in whatever his sister is doing if he can. So I suppose it's more revolving around my older daughter and just following her curiosity and really just exploring what she's interested in and doing more of that, and presenting opportunities to learn things at her own pace. So that's worked really well for us. And I suppose I would just say as well that with my background in hand-in-hand parenting, really what is a huge influence to me is that to create the conditions for our children to learn, they really need to be feeling connected, and they need to feel relaxed, and they need to feel in a good place. So and whenever they have good emotional health, then learning is going to really flourish in that environment. And I think that it was really difficult. It was a really difficult time for everybody with the COVID lockdown. And whenever children are under pressure and under stress, then just learning is not going to happen. You can teach them, but they're not going to retain anything. They're not going to learn. And so for me, really, my priority was around making sure I had enough support so that, you know, I was dealing with the, you know, with everything that the pandemic was throwing at us as a family. So I was well, like emotionally resourced, so I could really support my children through whatever they, you know, whatever they were going through. And, you know, to create that environment where our children were able to learn. So yeah, so that was really my priority, was having that understanding that her emotional well-being came first. And, you know, even if our day looked like, you know, if she in the morning, if she was feeling quite grumpy and quite frustrated, which happened a lot, you know, at the beginning, that really the priority was connecting with her. And the priority was, you know, so we would do special time, which is like one-to-one play together. We would do some of that first thing in the morning. And, you know, we'd really prioritize that connection. And then that would open up everything for her then, you know, in terms of being able to be curious about learning. So that's really what is still the you know, the important thing for us is putting that connection first.
Did you feel any pressure? I know you talked about her emotional well-being and making sure that she was able to kind of decompress from the schooling she had gone through, but did you personally feel pressure to have a structure or to get to a time when you would have a structure, or were you always kind of at ease about your approach?
I mean, I think I go through phases, like for sometimes all in the one day and sometimes over a period of a few weeks. And I think I'm still very much finding my way with it. And like, I am quite laid back. I mean, I think I just having that understanding about how, you know, how connection is really the key to, you know, our children learning, that I kind of know that it's impossible for our children not to learn if they're feeling happy and connected. So I think that's given me a certain sense of trust, and just trusting the process that she will learn what she needs to learn when she needs to learn it. So I guess that's been, you know, that's been the thing that's guided me most. But I mean, some days I'm in a complete panic going, oh my goodness, you know, what am I doing? You know, it feels like a big responsibility as well. So, you know, sometimes I sort of thinking I need to do more. I need to be sort of doing more formal teaching. And then, but on good days, I'm like, I see how much she is learning just in her day-to-day life, in the interactions she has with people around her, and her natural curiosity. And, you know, that's changed so much. And, you know, she's now like, she has this real interest in history. And like an example, like she just got curious about the Titanic, and, you know, it was built in Belfast and whatnot. So we were learning a lot about that, and it was completely directed by her. And then she was going out and playing with her friends outside, and she was like kind of giving them a lecture about the Titanic and everything about it and all the facts and figures. And they were all sort of staring at her as though to say, you know, I think one of them did say, you know, we're not in school now. Like, why are you talking about this stuff? And she was talking about it because she was curious and she was so interested and so excited by it. And, you know, that was a real moment for me of just seeing her. And that was something that wouldn't have happened before, just seeing her being so enthused about this stuff that she had learned. And she had all the facts and figures about it. And we hadn't, you know, it wasn't through sitting down and sort of learning them. It was just through her natural curiosity. So those are the good days. And then, yeah, some days I'm like, oh gosh, you know, what's going to happen in years to come, and what is she going to be interested in, and how am I going to facilitate that? And, you know, so it's yeah, so sometimes it can, sometimes I doubt myself. So I'm still on a journey with that for sure.
I'm thinking about parents who might be considering the same, and I'm wondering, did you sit down and discuss it with your partner? Did you discuss who would be doing the teaching? Was there any possibility of sharing the teaching, or what has been your approach in the process, kind of behind the scenes, beyond just the teaching?
Yeah, and I mean, that's so important. You know, the crew you have around you is so important. And I guess I just want to acknowledge as well that I have the, you know, the resources and the support that I need to be able to follow this path. And I know that for many parents, it's not an option, where they both need to be working, or there might be only one parent in the family, or whatever the case might be, that sometimes it's just not physically possible. So I'm very lucky and very privileged that is a possibility for me. So, you know, I live with my husband, and, you know, he is supportive of it, and he gets it. And I mean, it took a lot. I mean, it took us from March through to September, sort of thinking about it, talking about it. We still have ongoing conversations about, you know, how it will all work. And I mean, he would very much be like, God, would they not just, on a bad day, he'll be like, I'd rather just went to school and we had more time. And I get this whole homeschooling thing, but it's difficult as well, because you know, the kids are around all the time. He is fully supportive of it though. And he knows as well that it's not just as simple as the kids going to school. Like, my daughter wasn't very happy and she was struggling with it. So our life overall is on a more even keel. So he really gets that. But there's certainly days, I'll just completely keep it real, there's certainly days when he's like, why can't they just go to school? It's hard. So we share it. I mean, he's quite flexible with his work, so we share it. And I also have my sister who takes the kids one day a week for us, and that's amazing, because she takes them. She's, you know, the auntie who's like, you know, full of energy, and takes them off on exciting adventures all day. And, you know, and then like she gets to 8 o'clock and she like passes them back, and she's like, I have to go and lie in a darkened room now for the rest of the day. How do you do this the other 6 days? So but it's really amazing that we have her support with it as well. So I mean, it's all like quite a bit of a juggle. And you know, it's like sort of competing over, you know, I've got a Zoom meeting, and no, my Zoom meeting finishes at this time and yours starts at this time. So sometimes it's a little bit of a juggle, but it's working out at the minute.
Are there any other supports that you would recommend parents have in place before they take the leap?
I mean, for me, it's all about the emotional support. And even a couple of years ago, whenever my daughter was, you know, 4 or 5 years old, and I'd only just come across hand-in-hand parenting, and I really struggled. I remember I used to dread midterm break, because you know, I'd have a week with the, you know, a week in February with the kids on my own all week, and I really struggled with that. You know, I found myself losing my temper a lot. I found myself, you know, feeling very lonely and isolated, and I really struggled with it. And, you know, as I use the hand-in-hand tools, especially the listening partnerships for parents, which is, you know, emotional support where you exchange listening time with another parent. And, you know, as I started to really use that tool to support me, and also the other hand-in-hand tools, which are about supporting your kids, that I found I had a lot more capacity to be with my kids' big feelings, to be with their moods that change like the wind, and, you know, the frustration, anger, joy, you know, crying, all of it, you know, that I was much more able to navigate that. So for me, the number one thing is being emotionally resourced yourself and having the coping mechanisms in place, that I can support my kids with what they're going through. And I mean, a few years ago, I wouldn't have been in a position to do that, I don't think. But now that has become a lot easier for me, fortunately. So that's the big thing. But another thing I would say is really trusting your gut instinct on it too. And I mean, whenever my daughter was starting nursery, I had this real gut instinct, like this is not the right place for her. And it's not apportioning any blame. Like the nursery was lovely, their school was lovely, they did everything they possibly could within the system, but that system just didn't fit my daughter. And I had a real gut sense about that, and I kind of overrode it and sent her to school. And I knew she was really struggling with it emotionally, and I sort of stuck with it as long as I could. But when I think, and then I had a real gut instinct, the minute schools were shut for COVID, I had a real gut instinct then that this was the right thing for our family. Unfortunately, I had the time and the space to really sort of, and the opportunity to really give it a go before I had to commit to it. So that was a huge benefit. But so I still, even on the hard days, I just come back to that kind of gut feeling that I knew that this was the right decision for my family. So, yeah.
Do you feel that you will reach a stage, whether it's through like maths is probably the thing that I think about the most, like maths and reading and Do you feel like there will come a time where you need to rely on outside sources for teaching help, or do you feel capable to work through those?
So yeah, maths is the big one that we get hung up on, isn't it? And so I mean, I did A-level maths, which is the equivalent of, you know, leaving cert maths. I got an A in A-level maths, and I like my husband laughs at me because I don't know my times tables. I'm rubbish at them, and my like if I'm like trying to split a restaurant bill or something in my head, I'm so useless. But I just take out the phone and I like punch in the numbers. And my daughter can split a cafe bill on my phone. So I'm like, well, what's the problem? But also, I must. I'll maybe you can link the article. There's a really a friend of mine sent me a really interesting article by Peter Gray, who's like one of these sort of education sort of guru. Like he's done a lot of writing and research and into how children learn, I suppose. And he wrote this lovely article about maths, and it was back in the I think it was back in the 1930s in America, actually, and there was different school districts, and they had to a decision was made that there was too much on the curriculum, and each school district had to pull something off the curriculum for some reason. And this one school district, the person who was in charge, he decided to take maths out. He said, right, we're not going to do maths. And I can't remember, I don't remember now enough why he made that decision, but he thought that children were being taught maths too early. And so it was like this kind of experiment basically that was done where the children didn't learn any maths until they went to like middle school or something, until they were like 12 or something. And they didn't learn any maths at all. And then they actually tested the kids that had no maths, no formal maths training, and the kids that had learned maths since they were like, you know, 6 or 7 years old. And they found that the children that did no formal maths training were better at maths. So because they had learned it through their everyday interactions. And I think the example they gave was that, you know, the kids that had been taught maths, they'd been taught fractions, but so they'd been taught it was very much abstract. It was done in an abstract way, so that children, they'd been taught fractions and they could get the tests on fractions, but whenever you gave them, like say, a pizza to divide up between like 6 people, they couldn't do it. Whereas children that hadn't been taught the maths were able to, you know, through their lives, they had a natural understanding of how things were divided up. I'm probably not doing that story justice. So maybe you will link the article because it's really fascinating. It goes into all the detail of it. I've done a very simplified version of it there. But the message that I took from it was that children learn a lot through their everyday lives. And I learned a lot of maths through school, and I don't remember a single bit of it. And I can't even do basic basic sums in my head. So I've become a lot more relaxed about that. And also what's been really helpful, and another thing that I would recommend if anybody's thinking about it, is to get out and meet other homeschooling families. And we've been a little bit limited, but we've managed sort of between lockdowns to make some homeschooling friends and to meet other families. And it's so lovely hearing the experiences of people that have been doing this a lot longer than me, and people that have older children. And their experience, a couple of them have said to me that their kids have gone through what we would call GCSE maths, which is the like junior cert maths. And they've done it because they wanted to get on to another course. You know, they're teenagers and they've wanted to get on and do something else. So that a requirement is to have this, you know, GCSE maths exam. And they've literally sat down with the textbook and learnt it, you know, completely self-directed, have opened it and gone through it in a couple of weeks, learned what they've needed to do, and very much like, this is a formula to pass the exam. And I've sat down and done the exam after having no maths training. You know, they haven't done sort of 12, 13 years of maths, and they're able to sit down and do this exam with minimal kind of effort because they've just learned it through their everyday life. So and like lots of stories of homeschoolers going to university, studying medicine, studying engineering, but they're very much self-directed. So if a child is curious about engineering, then they will They will research it, they'll learn about it, they will, I mean, you can learn absolutely anything on YouTube these days. And I mean, that's one of the ways I won my husband round, because he's like, he learns everything on YouTube. Like he's built his own computer, he's built like arcade machines, like gaming machines. He has just, he's got a really wide range of interests, and he learns everything on YouTube. And I'm like, you know, life is about learning these things on this ongoing process. And if we're curious and interested and motivated to do it, we'll find the resources to actually do that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And I feel like actually the traditional method of schooling is kind of this outdated dinosaur that's like dying away in a sense, because we can learn at such a rapid pace now. Anything that we want to learn, any subject, any interest, we have resources available to us, and we don't have to go week by week, day by day. You know, like I think if I'd had something like Duolingo back when I was taking Spanish classes, like I probably would have excelled so much further, because I would have had it right there in my hand. I could have done it anytime. I wouldn't have had to wait to do a 1 day a week class, or to find someone that I could practice with. And yeah, so I wholeheartedly like, I'm so aligned with what you've just said there. And the question around socialization that everyone seems to ask when it comes to homeschooling, you mentioned there, like being able to make friends with other homeschooling families. So what is your answer for anyone who asks about children getting to socialize with other children when they're homeschooled?
Yeah, so I think, first of all, in our society, we have a very fixed view of what socialization is, that you know, my 9-year-old daughter needs to hang out with a whole group of 9-year-old girls in order to be socialized. And that's actually not very normal. And I think that it's often not very helpful that there's a group of 9-year-olds and they're hanging out together, and they're all at the same level of maturity. So they're all struggling with the same things. And then, you know, if one of them is feeling, you know, if one of them is having difficulties and starts picking on the other friend, then none of the others really know how to manage that well. And what I've realized, like in homeschool meetups, they are, you know, there tends to be, you know, babes in arms. There's 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, and then right up to, I mean, the teenagers kind of stop hanging out. You know, they don't really want to hang out with the younger ones, but sometimes you do get the odd teenager there as well, and everything in between. And I find that, you know, they kind of hang out in these groups, and the older ones manage the younger ones, and the younger ones kind of tag along and learn off the older ones. And then also there's always adults and parents around. So my daughter would frequently come over to me, and this is one of the things she struggled with about in school, is that she would frequently come over to me and say, oh, this has happened and I don't know how to deal with it, or, you know, I need a bit of help. And kids need our help to navigate these social systems and friendships and all of that. And sometimes they just need a hug, and, you know, they just need that reconnection, and then they can go off again. So, and I was able to offer that to my daughter and help her with difficulties, or if there's a child that was annoying her and following her around, I could come over and interact with that child a little bit and help her navigate that before she got to the point where she was getting really angry. So I think that's a much more natural way for kids to socialize. And you know, like my daughter and son have found new friends that are different ages and, you know, different genders, and it's a lot more fluid. So I think there's lots of opportunities for them to meet and to be friends with a sort of a wide range of different people, and they can actually really find the people that they're interested in and that they have stuff in common with. I think sometimes kids are thrown together in school and they're just friends because they're, you know, in the same classroom together, and they maybe don't have, you know, that maybe wouldn't have chosen each other otherwise, you know. So so I think there's a lot more opportunity for kids to socialize whenever they're not in school. And it's one of the things my daughter hated. It was like, in school, I never got to talk to anybody. I just wanted to talk to my friends, and we're never allowed to talk.
That brings up such a great point, because honestly, like I would have always chosen to hang out with older people or adults. No matter how young I was, I always had an interest in hanging out with people that were older than me. And I would have loved that growing up, to have not been stuck with only my group of, you know, fellow students that were my age, that were all going through the same things. I absolutely can see where it's great to open up that world for your daughter and have her interact with so many different types of people, different ages of people, and in different settings, I would assume as well. So,
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
instead of just sitting down at a desk and looking at the chalkboard or whatever, or the whiteboard these days. But what have been your favorite things about homeschooling so far?
So I just love the freedom of it. I suppose just the freedom of not being tied down to the school run has been very liberating for me. So it's really nice. And like what we've got this routine now that because my daughter hated reading, and she started to get curious about reading, and we got some like some amazing like graphic novel comics for her to read, and I just sort of leave them on her bedstand. And we got into this, we've got this routine where in the morning, because that would be her kind of a little bit more grumpy time, and I'll bring her bowl of cornflakes and I'll bring it up to her bed, and she'll lie in bed, Lady Muck as we call her, lying in bed with her cornflakes. But that's when she'll read, and she'll stay in bed for like an hour. She'll read for like an hour, which is sort of so unheard of before, and she'll have her cornflakes and she'll be happy. And then I can spend some time with her little brother, playing with him or reading with him, just sitting at the table chatting to him and having a nice peaceful morning. So our mornings are so much more peaceful that way, and she's getting what she needs, and we're getting some schooling in there right before she even gets out of bed, so then we can get on and do something else during the day. So that's been really liberating as well, just being able to really take ownership of her learning for the both of us, that just really noticing what she's curious about and being able to follow that and really enjoy it. And whenever she was at school, she came home and she'd be grumpy and she'd have homework to do, and then anything outside of that, she was like, I'm not in school now, I'm not interested in any of those things. But now we're reading a lot more books together and learning things together about all sorts of things. And, we'll go down these like YouTube rabbit holes and learn like all kinds of weird things. And so it's just really, it's stuff that I really enjoy as well. So we can sort of just learn this stuff together, and that's been an absolute pleasure. It's just like, it feels like I feel very empowered that we're like learning this stuff and taking ownership of it, and following what we're curious about. So just a lot of freedom. Yeah.
I love that. Are there any, for people that are wondering, are there any unexpected costs associated, or do you still put monies aside to cover things for like homeschooling, like in case there is an interest, or buying a kit, or something like that?
Yeah, so I suppose, you can do it. I suppose there's different ways. I think a mistake a lot of people do is possibly, a lot of people have said to me that they've gone out and bought there's all these like pre-made kind of curriculums and different things that you can sign up for and pay for and everything. And, I think people often maybe panic a bit at the start and like sign up for all these subscription things and whatnot. So you can find yourself spending quite a lot of money on that. But my daughter's never really been interested in those things, so it's probably saved me a fortune. So you probably could spend a lot of money nearly out of like an anxiety that you have to have enough stuff. But we have just really tried to use our library and get out books that we're interested in, watch things on YouTube. So we've done that. Now things might change, because I guess as lockdown is opening up and we're getting a bit more involved in activities and things like that, but kids are doing those kind of things anyway, so you can actually do it. I think you can really very much fit into your own family's budget and your own your own preferences. You certainly are out and about more and doing more things, so that can certainly cost a bit more money. But I guess with lockdown, that hasn't been an issue. We've just been spending so much time outdoors, like not spending any money. But I think it's very flexible in that you can really put your resources, if you have them, into whatever is of interest. And, but you don't necessarily have to spend a whole lot of money. And then think of you suppose you do save money on the uniforms and the shoes, the school shoes that they grow out of, and those kind of things as well.
I was thinking even the petrol to school runs and things like that. It's nice that you don't have to have that as an everyday expense, or even for the environment. It's kind of nice to to know that you're not contributing in that way. Were there any unexpected downsides that you've discovered along the way besides just navigating, Zoom meetings and things like that you've already mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, it is intense. It is so intense. And like some days I'm just like, oh God, I would love them to be in school 9 till 3. That would be fab. I'll not lie. Like sometimes I'm like, oh my goodness. So, I mean, I guess there are sacrifices you have to make in terms of, your own time. But like for me, just seeing how much more content my daughter is, and how happy the two of them are and how close they are. They, her and her brother are, they're so close because they're spending so much time together, and that does outweigh it. So, but it can be super intense having kids all day, every day. And but yeah, so that is difficult. I won't lie about that. But overall, it's knowing it's the right choice for us is kind of what gets me through that side of it.
Any last words of wisdom, tips, resources to offer families who are exploring this option?
I think that there's some really amazing books out there that are really helpful, and there's a couple of films that I watched as well. Actually, God, now I'm not sure if I'll be able to remember the names of them. There's a couple of homeschooling films, that like documentary type films that have been made. I cannot remember. If I remember them, I'll send them to you, Ariana.
Perfect.
But there were a couple of films that really helped me just get a sense of it. There's some really good YouTube, like TED Talks. There's the Ken Robinson TED Talks on creativity. That's, I think it's one of the most listened to ones in the world. And so there's a lot of really good writing by people like Ken Robinson and Peter Gray. So I think it's really good if you're worried about, and it's really normal, I think, to have those worries about maths, how will they learn and how will they learn this, but really having that understanding of how children naturally learn can be really helpful. So there's loads of stuff out there that you can look up, and like a quick Google search, you'll find like lots of resources of things to read. So I would definitely recommend that. And then I would recommend just speaking to other parents that are doing it. And it really helped me to normalize it and to get a sense of, just meeting those kids and seeing like happy, confident kids, and just feeling that it was more achievable. Yeah, so those are the main things I would recommend.
I've already asked you on our original episode, which was the very first episode of Living Life Well Fed, what legacy that you hope to leave behind through the work that you were doing. Are there any specific things that you hope to leave with your children through this extra time together in homeschooling?
Yeah, I mean, I really hope to leave them with a curiosity and a love of learning, and yeah, because I think that's something that many people lose along the way somewhere. And it's been a joy just to watch my daughter sort of regain that curiosity, and I just hope that stays with her, and that she'll be resourced enough to be able to to do the things she loves. And also it's important to me that my kids stay connected to what they love doing, who they are as a person. And because that was something that was certainly trained out of me in school, and it took me a long time to sort of undo all of that and to find out what I actually liked, what my interests were, and who I was, and what I was good at and what I wasn't good at. And it's taken me to be in my 40s to figure that out. So I really hope that my children figure that out, or stay connected to that, and that hopefully they'll do that through just being given the freedom to follow what they're interested in. So that's my wish for them. Yeah.
Such a beautiful gift. And I had a very similar experience of just needing to come back to and learn who I was and what I was interested in. And so I feel very similarly to you about what I'd like to leave behind for my children, and giving them those alternative paths to learning and creativity and exploring who they really are. So thank you for all that you have shared with us. I know we didn't talk about hand-in-hand parenting as much in this episode, but if people want to get in touch with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on my social media on Facebook and Instagram. You can email me, Pamela Q at handinhandparenting.org. I suppose what I'd say about hand-in-hand parenting is just that it's such a support for if you are homeschooling or thinking about it. There's such invaluable support there. If you're using the hand-in-hand tools, it can really support you as a parent. And support your children as well. So that's been such a huge resource for me in my parenting or my homeschooling journey as well. So yeah, I'd be delighted for people to get in touch.
Well, thank you for being with us. Again, we're just going to have to start calling you like the resident parenting expert for Living a Life Well Fed, because you've been amazing and we have loved having you on the show yet again. So thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, oh, you're so welcome, Ariana. Pleasure to be here.
We hope you've enjoyed the show. Please feel free to leave a comment or a review to let us know what you've loved about this episode and others like it. And if you'd like to be featured on our show, or if you know of someone who would be an amazing guest, get in touch with us at info@wellfedphotography.com and mention Living a Life Well Fed in the subject line.